And we start with the most important class again, the Engineer, this time Engineer II, who gets very comfy +4 Vitality +2 Mobility. And we are using this by getting Vitality and lots of Stamina. Very good for Engineers. For the green perks we get, of course, the faster building, one faster walking, and then 2 fillers. For yellow, we also need to spend as much as possible in fillers, otherwise you wouldn't be able to get 6 in the first row. And then, depending on which BR you play, if you play full auto weapons or semi-auto rifles, you want as much vertical recoil as possible. And if you play low BR with bolt actions, instead of spending 12 points here, spend them here, and after that one here. Next we have the Radioman II, who requires very tight perking. Reasons for that are, since he has so much green, we want to use the chance to have one very fast soldier in the squad. For 2 reasons. A, Radiomen are all about surviving, so he wants to run away quickly from danger. But since he's so tanky overall, he's also great to do flanks and quickly get to a certain position, or to start capping if he's the last soldier that's surviving. So we want to give him as much speed as possible, which also synergizes with the 22 green points, which give you 11%, so half of it, as a sprint bonus. So he doesn't just have +15 sprint speed, he has +26 sprint speed. Also this profits a little bit in addition. So we give him all the moving bonuses, and then these 2 filler perks, because it's extremely hard to actually find enough points, to find 6 points in the first row. Of course, the yellow points help with this too. Since we're having so much sprinting, we absolutely need additional stamina, and of course vitality. And then depending on the BR that you're playing, if you're playing full auto weapons or semi-auto rifles, this is great. This is basically a given. If you're playing low BR, you of course want this. Since this is a Radioman and he really needs to survive, it's actually useful, and this is one of the extremely rare cases where it's useful to give 1 point into additional surviving, because here we want to use the first point that gives you a higher chance to survive. And yeah, with a Radioman it makes sense, since you usually keep him far away somewhere behind a house, and he rarely gets shot, which is barely survivable, because usually you get either too much damage or multiple bullets flying at you. Oftentimes Radiomen die from explosions, and there it's actually more beneficial to have this perk to get a higher chance to survive. Next we have the Anti-Tank Gunner II, who is one of the classes that profit by far the most from perfect min-maxing. Reasons for that are, many of these perks are actually greatly suited for anti-tank gunners. First of all, of course, vitality, so you survive all the splash damage from enemy HEs and from enemies spraying at you while you try to run to the enemy tank. Then of course as much stamina as possible, because oftentimes your anti-tank gunner is stored away somewhere on the map and you switch to him and you want to quickly get to the enemy tank. Then we want as much fast aim speed as possible, because many anti-tank weapons are slow, and fast aiming helps a lot while trying to kill enemy tanks. For the same reason we also want faster reload speed, since basically all anti-tank weapons are reloadable and oftentimes you will need multiple shots. Now we want some filler perks, and of course, well, weapon changing is useful since you will be constantly charging, or if you're getting to the enemy tank you have to kill a bunch of infanterists and then switch to your anti-tank weapon. Absolute must-have. Higher climbing or higher jumping is also quite useful, since you either sometimes want to jump on a tank, because getting on the roof of a tank and then shooting downwards usually kills it instantly, because the roof of a tank is very weak, or you want to get on a house, on a building, or on something to get a better angle while shooting at the enemy tank. So this is also quite a good filler perk. And then of course, depending on the BR, either better spraying or better bolt action shooting. Next we got one of the tankiest classes in the game, the Flametrooper II, who starts with plus 12.3 additional life points, and of course you want to combine that with vitality, giving him basically 1.5 as much HP as a normal soldier has. Since you're literally swimming in red points, you can also max out the stamina and in 1 additional breath holding perk. since he's got so much stamina, you really want to combine that with faster sprinting, because the optimal way to flamethrowers is to not force it, but to wait for a good moment when flamethrowers are actually good at, oftentimes sending normal soldiers in first to bait the enemies, and only then, when you're sure that you can get a safe attack in, pick the flamethrower soldier, who will be quite far away, so you want to get quickly on the point. Also, once again, this will likely be your one soldier or your two soldiers in the flamethrower squad, who are the only ones with fast sprinting and lots of stamina, so you can use them as the mobile quick soldiers, while the rest is usually slower and has the faster aiming speed. So perfect combo. And of course you want fire extinguishing and post change. And the yellow perks are actually almost useless for Flametroopers because they don't really profit in the flaming department from that. Additional flamethrower fueling volume is completely useless. 95% of all times your Flametrooper is gonna die anyway. And even then, yeah, you don't get anything from it. Doesn't matter, yeah? So this is a complete waste of perks. Instead, you want to have additional vertical recoil reduction for your main weapon, so you can actually precisely and reliably kill enemies far away until you get close enough to use your flamethrower. Next we have a class that's not included in the tech tree, but that's commonly available in form of premium squads for all nations, or sometimes as event squads, the Paratroopers. These are one of the hardest to perk classes, because you preferably would want all of the perks, but you can afford only a few of them because Paratroopers have a net plus of +6, so they're basically a tier 2 class. All of these perks that you're going to see now are composed with the scenario in mind that you're under enemy fire. Because if you're not under enemy fire, you don't need any of these perks. You will have all the time in the world. But if you are under any enemy fire, you need as much survivability, as much tankiness as possible, and you need your bots to be as effective as possible to shoot at the enemies. So this is why we are going to perk our soldiers the way you see it now. First we get the standard vitality plus stamina. We can only afford one stamina, we would preferably have more, and a bit of breath holding, but yeah, this is all we can get. Then comes the hardest part, the green perks. Well, it's easy in terms of not being able to afford any sprinting, but yeah, we want weapon aim speed, since once again, once you jump down and you reach the ground, if enemies are seeing you, they will instantly start shooting at you, possibly having even started shooting at you earlier. Usually you're quite safe in the sky because the three-dimensional axis of enemies shooting at you usually means the distance is further. So the damage that you take is smaller than you would usually take because the damage drop-off works in your favor. So you're likely to survive, even if you're getting shot from while jumping down. But once your soldiers reach the ground, you want you, and especially your bots, to be as effective as possible at shooting back. And for that you absolutely need the fast aiming speed, and you absolutely need the turnaround perk. That makes your bots more precise when they turn around shooting. And you want only one parachute reduction, because you don't really need this one as a paratrooper, since if you jump out, all you need to do is look at the box and wait for 3 seconds after the paratrooper box opened its parachute. If you open your parachute in that moment, you will land perfectly on the ground without taking any damage. And without spending too much time in the sky slowly falling down. So this is just a little insurance, but unlike the attacker pilots, you absolutely don't really need this perk because you have this perfect indicator in form of the paratrooper box. And then 2 fillers for green, and for yellow, you basically have the choice of, do you want to go maximum into this configuration where you have vertical recoil and faster reload. This is usually good if you have a weapon with very low amount of bullets, or if you have a weapon with 100 bullets or something like that, you don't need the reload. In that case, you just take one of these, because with 6 paratroopers that are under fire, though the fire usually won't be too strong, this perk actually becomes statistically quite helpful and quite effective. And also it's a good insurance for the cases where you use the recon or the mortar setup, and you only have one radioman and one engineer, meaning if he dies, you don't get access to the special abilities. So, yep, in these cases, every additional chance of our rare specialist to survive is very welcome, and then you just use this configuration as fillers, making it even better for you that you have more of these since you're a paratrooper. If you're using one of the bolt action setups, of course you don't need this, you can just put it here. And if you're using a weapon with very low recoil, you don't even need this, you can just put everything here, and then, yeah, only a little bit here, and you can max out on the reload speed. Which would be, for example, the case with the Italian paratroopers and their slow-firing, low-recoil SMGs. Keep in mind, not all paratrooper squads in the game have the same amount of perks. More than half of them have this standard configuration. Some few exceptions have other perk distributions. In these cases, you can adjust to your likings. For example, the standard American paratroopers have also 14, 18, 22. But the old rare event paratroopers have 22, 17, 15. Next we have one of the most proficient weapon handlers in the game, the Sniper III, who starts with plus 5% reload speed, which we increase by getting him plus 12 reload speed, so almost plus 20% reload speed from the start. Then, since you're playing high BR, likely, where you use full auto or semi-auto sniper weapons, you want the complete package of vertical recoil reduction. If you're playing the Sniper III on low BR with bolt action weapons, instead put these 12 points into the faster bolt action cycling. And of course 2 filler perks. Green, we also have 2 filler perks, and then the usual package of faster aiming and faster walking. And since we still have the -2 red penalty, making it possible to get vitality, we max out the stamina. We get 1 health restored perk. Keep in mind, if you don't have soldier, if your soldier doesn't have vitality, a second point here would be a waste usually, because already doubling the amount of health restored from a normal med pack would already heal you to 100% life if you don't have vitality. And then we have exactly 4 red left. We absolutely want a bunch of them in breath holding. But on high BR, you likely are gonna face lots of explosions constantly, so having 1 point in less head shaking can actually be useful. Next we have one of the most fun classes to play on higher BRs, the Machine Gunner III, who comes with a very comfy 22 yellow and some generous 17 and 18 green-red, meaning unlike with the previous Machine Gunner 1, we are not too tight anymore when it comes to the green and red filler points. So we start with, of course, vitality and then 2 breath holding, which is extremely important if you play high BR, because all of your machine guns will have around 100 bullets. So you absolutely need it in order to spray all those bullets. Then, of course, additional aim speed, walking, and pose change. And for the yellow vertical recoil, if you have a weapon that's very hard on the horizontal recoil and relatively small on the vertical, then of course you rather just put everything into horizontal. But for most weapons, the vertical recoil is more important to be reduced. And for that we want maximum in that and a filler of faster reload speed. And then you usually are ending up with 2 free yellow points. And well, whenever you have 2 free yellow points and there's nothing else better to do, especially if you already maxed out the important 2 filler perks for yellow, you can put them into the downing state, because Machine Gunner trees, especially on high BR, are so powerful. They have such a large amount of damage output, and there are so many situations where their bomb or rocket hits you and your squad explodes. Having a few soldiers with these perks can actually mean that one of your soldiers or 2 survive, and then you just wait a bit and you heal them up, and then you can once again start spraying hundreds of bullets at your enemies. So this is actually a nice possible benefit. Next we got Rifleman III, who are quite delicate to perk, since they have, due to their equal amount of points in every color, you can't really max out one color hard, so you have to balance everything out. Now, in order to do this, we first get, of course, our vitality, then we have 3 red left, giving us a nice 1 point in stamina and 1 point in breath holding. So we're well rounded in this department. Then, since riflemen are literally there to just fight and shoot, we want additional aiming speed, additional walking speed, and then 3 green fillers here. As usual, now with the jump height. Also, as I noticed playing yesterday, the jump height perk isn't just useful to jump higher and get into higher points. You can easier and quicker jump over trenches, and it also looks very cool when you jump so ridiculously high. And most enemies aren't used to aiming that high. They don't expect such high jumps. So this is quite a nice perk, especially if you manage for the rare occasions to have even 2 points here. And for yellow, it once again depends which weapons you're playing. This is a low BR setup for maxing bolt action rifles. If you play high BR with full auto weapons or semi-auto, you just remove these two, we remove one here, and then you can put them all into vertical recoil reduction, and then you get your perfectly perked high BR Rifleman. Speaking of maxed out jumping height, we get the Assaulter 4, who is officially the most stacked class in the game, being the only class that gets a hefty bonus of plus 12. Meaning this is the only class who has overall 60 perk points to spare. And also one of the best starter perks, the plus 12 firearm reload speed, which is more than double of what the Sniper 3 gets. Insanely strong class, absolutely strong class, and there's not even any compromise we have to do. We can just pick the best of the best. We start with Vitality and additional Stamina and additional Breath Holding, so very strong setup for red. We get for green the standard setup of weapon aim speed, faster walking, then change pose. And here's the kicker, since we have so much green left, we can actually put in everything into maximum jump height. The alternatives would be theoretically a mix of 1 point in jump height, 1 point in faster climbing. It even synergizes a bit, though, yeah, like usually climbing higher is better the more you stack it, because then you can, with 2 points in this perk, you can jump or you can climb on some areas that are basically impossible to climb for normal soldiers. Many sniper players do this, for example, though I personally don't recommend to spend 2 minutes climbing somewhere just to be found out after one shot and then be killed instantly. Yeah, so yeah, but if you have a class like the Assaulter 4 who swims in perk points, yeah, then you can afford putting everything here. So this is quite strong and fun. And for yellow, you also don't have to make any compromises. You can put everything into vertical recoil reduction and then a bit of reload and the rest in the standard good yellow perks. Next we have the Fighter Pilot 3, who profits from having exactly enough perk points in all colors to get all the goodies. First, the most important perk for pilots, the additional aircraft detection range, and you can get 2 of the pizza perk, which is the second best perk for pilots. So great start here. For red, we are drowning in red points, so we get ourselves vitality. Very important to survive enemy planes shooting at you. Also, if you want to fly close to the ground, you constantly will suffer from explosions, and having more points here can actually also save you. And the rest we spread out, having 3 in additional flight stamina and then 2 filler perks in regeneration of flight stamina and breath holding for the cases that you actually jump out of the plane and then want to fight with your SMG. Then for green we get the green head perk and then 1 parachute perk and 1 changing post perk. The rest are completely irrelevant. Keep in mind the leaving and changing your position within the plane is completely useless in Enlisted, because the game doesn't even let you change the positions properly. So yeah, this would be a complete waste for pilots. But well, having even 1 point in the additional parachute damage reduction is quite good, because you don't need to survive with much life. All you need is even a little bit of life. As long as you're still alive, your soldier will be able to fight. And I noticed the first point here is actually very often exactly what you need to survive, and then be able to run around and shoot down enemies with your SMG or with your 2 SMGs that you have equipped on your pilot. Next we have a very special class, very special for 2 reasons. First, the Attacker 3 is by far the best pilot class, since he's the only one who can get 3 pizza perks and the range detection perk. So already extremely good start. Then the starter perk is one of the best. He gets plus 21% additional flight stamina, which if you wanted to buy it would cost you 9 red points. So the starter perk alone is worth 9 points, making the soldier basically a 28 vitality perked soldier, which is insanely good, especially if you compare that with most other classes who have more or less completely irrelevant starter perks. So this is a great combo, meaning that we can afford to put the vitality points into, of course, vitality, and then instead of the usual flight stamina, we take normal stamina that we will spend for running and breath holding that we will spend for shooting. Why are we doing that? Very simple. On higher BRs, you'll start unlocking attacker planes that have 3, 4, or 5 crew members. Meaning they're great for attacking the ground and then eventually jumping out of the plane and either capture the point or get behind enemy lines and causing lots of damage there. In order to do that, you want your pilots to be as tanky as possible so they survive all of that, and also to be quite useful in terms of fighting. They would be insanely perfect for that if they had aim speed, though they don't have that, but instead we take the faster walking and we take as much parachute or parachuting damage reduction as we can get, since sometimes, or quite often even, your jumps won't be too perfect, or there will be some trees in between or some tall house, and then you will land earlier than expected, or your plane will be shot and you will have to jump out in a very unfortunate moment. All of these situations usually lead to this perk saving your ass because you actually survive instead of dying. So this is extremely good, extremely useful to have. You want all 3 of them for this specific type of attacker pilot, and then 2 filler perks. And this is the only class basically where having medspec usual speed is useful, because after jumping out with 5 of your soldiers, especially in the Junkers 188, which is the by far best paratrooper squad in the game, since instead of having 6 paratroopers and nothing special, you get 5 paratroopers and an insanely overpowered bomber. So yeah, if you jump out to 5 soldiers, the chance that many of them will be injured is quite high, and in these cases you really want to quickly heal yourself so you can be more effective in fights and not die too quickly. So yeah, a perfect overall package for a pilot, and especially with the special usage of these attacker pilots as mobile and offensive paratrooper squads. For the end, we have one of the most fun to perk classes in the game, the Tanker III, who, thanks to the vast amount of perk points, doesn't have to go for compromises. Instead, you can go for redundancy, meaning we can overlap multiple tankers with the important roles of driving, gunning, and loading. So even in the common case that we lose a few of these tankers, we still have a fully functional, quickly operating tanker crew. As usual, always go to appearance change orders here, or name change orders, and name your tankers according to the perks they have. You always want one driver, and loaders, and gunners. Now, since you have so many perk points, you can also give them additional roles. For example, the driver is also a maxed out extinguisher, the gunners are maxed out extinguishers and repairmen, and the loaders are just loaders. So, how do you... Well, regarding equipment, by the way, since you are basically forced to use a backpack, or since it's by far the only logical choice, you want to give them a large backpack, and then one toolkit. You never will need more. You will never need more. Instead, you can max out on medkits, meaning you can heal yourself very often, which makes them also surprisingly tanky assaulters, since don't forget, a tank, especially a tank with 5 or more crewmen, is also quite a potent assaulter squad. So, starting with the driver, he profits from the Tanker III starter perk of having plus 45% gear shift speed, which is a perfect combo with the plus 90% gear shift that you can choose. So we basically switch our gears 1.5 times as fast as normal. Great. Then we get all the other driver perks For every tanker, you will always want to max out the moving around perk and then the fire extinguishing perk, because it's common for your tankers to catch fire. And also standard, you always take these two red perks because nothing else really makes sense. And oftentimes your tanks will be blown up far away, and then you will have to run 200 meters, and for that you absolutely need additional maximum stamina. And since you have so many medkits, you actually profit from, well, additional medkit efficacy, since you will heal yourself very often. And, well, oftentimes you take so much damage that you're barely alive. And yeah, having as much healing as possible is really, really good. Once again, especially if you leave the tank and run around and use your tankers as assaulters. For yellow, here comes the first specialization. If you have a tank with only 4 men, you want to split the gunner perk and the loader perk for each role to be split on 2 tankers. In a standard German tank where you have 5 crewmen, you want to have 1 more loader, because loading is usually more important than the gunning perk. So yeah, that's why the driver, who's the 3rd dude, gets the loader perk. And then the 2 standard yellow filler perks for tankers, the additional amount of repair kit uses, which is also basically the reason why you would never need more than 1 repair kit itself equipped. And then the very important weapon change speed, which also lets your tanker switch faster between your weapon, your repair kit, your extinguisher, and your grenades or mines or whatever. And since we have lots of green left over, we're gonna make our driver also the fire extinguisher. And now we get the loaders, who are 100% focused on loading. They get the same standard perks, but I see this one isn't even a perfect one. This is a perfect one. Who gets the same amount of standard perks. Here the 2 yellow, here the greens, here the reds, and then he gets the faster loading. Very important. And the faster loading progress, or basically you don't lose loading progress. Meaning if you need to load a shell for 10 seconds, and then instead of finishing the HE loading, you want to switch last second to AP shells. If you don't have this perk, you will lose all the progress, all the 9 seconds you've been loading, and then you have to load for 10 new seconds. So this perk is theoretically even better for speed than this perk. Especially if the situation on the battlefield changes and you quickly need to change to a different shell type. So extremely important perk. Both perks are very crucial for the overall fire rate that you have. And then, since we already have a specialist on extinguishing, like the driver, you want just to you have additional filler perks on the repair. Though the loaders don't even get any additional roll because they are useless for extinguishing and barely useless for repairing. It's just for statistical variety. Now come the most universal tankers in the crew, the gunners, who, since gunning only has 1 perk here and nothing green, you can make them perfectly specialized extinguishers and repairmen. So we give them the standard filler perks, we give them the faster gunning aiming perk, and then we give them the maximum repair speed, maximum extinguishing, meaning whenever the tank is burning and something is something is damaged on the outside, you want to leave the tank with this crew member and quickly extinguish and then quickly repair. No other soldier, no other tanker in the tank will be able to do that as well as this one. And then, since we still have lots of green left over because there's nothing better to take, we can just fill everything in the green perks. And for statistical optimization, you can have one of them having 3 here and 1 here, and the other one the opposite.